Literal equations can look really hard. What they ask in this question, though, which of the following gives p in terms of m, r, and n? They want you to solve it for p equals something. And if you're not sure what variable you're solving for, you can look at the answer choices here, and it will be obvious. So I take my original equation, and p is over here, and I just need to move this stuff to the top of the other side, and move this stuff to the bottom of the other side. And it turns out that's choice B. No math required. This one we want to solve for f, and there's multiple f's in this equation, so we need to get one f by itself, and then we will have our answer. So the first thing we can do is multiply this entire thing by n plus f. It's pretty much cross-multiplying. On this side, it cancels out, and on the other side, we have this. The next step is to distribute the r. So we have Rn plus Rf is equal to f, and then we're going to move that Rf over. So it looks like this, and we can factor an f out of this. So f times 1 minus r. So think about distributing in reverse, and that's pretty much what we did here. This allows us to then divide both sides by 1 minus r. And you probably noticed that this is one of our answers. So the right answer here was B. So they give us a linear equation, and they tell us that the line contains the point CD. So I'm going to plug in C for x and D for y. So I have D is equal to KC plus 4. And they ask, what is the slope of the line in terms of C and D? What they're saying that isn't revealed in the answer choice is to solve this thing for k, because k is in the slope position. So I'm going to take this earlier equation that I had up here, and I will subtract 4 from both sides. So d minus 4 is equal to kc. I'm going to divide both sides by c, and here is my answer. K is equal to d minus 4 over c, which is over here, choice A. Next up, we're looking for L in terms of n and h. So if the equation is n is equal to 7LH, I can divide by 7h on both sides, and I'm done, because I'm left with n over 7h on the left and L on the right. So that is this one, C. Here they tell me to solve for P. I know that because I'm just looking at the answers, and there it is. If you actually read it, they tell you down here, P in terms of the other variables. So I can follow the rules or order of operations in reverse. I'm going to multiply both sides by 6, so I have 6e is equal to O plus 4m plus p. And I want to get p by itself, so I'm just going to subtract O and subtract 4m. I'll do them at the same time. So I have 6e minus O minus 4m is equal to p. So it turns out my answer here was A. They want to know p in terms of t. So this is a fairly straightforward one. I take 0.8 p is equal to t, and I get p by itself. So I divide both sides by 0.8. Cancels out on the left. P is equal to t over 0.8. D. They want to know the storage cost per item in terms of the other variables, and that is h, as I can see in all of the answer choices. So this is my equation. The first thing that I unwrap is I square both sides to get rid of that radical. So I have q squared is equal to 2dk all over h. Next I'll multiply both sides by h. This cancels out, and I'm left with h q squared is equal to 2dk. So this is where I will divide both sides by q squared. And there is my answer, because this cancels out, and I'm left with h is equal to 2dk over q squared. C. This one, they want to know density in terms of the other variables. So if I multiply both sides by d, I get dv is equal to m, and then I divide by v. And I get that density is equal to mass over volume, which is a pretty familiar equation. Here they want to know which of the following is equivalent to the velocity v. So v is equal to what? So I know I'm going to solve for v, so I'm going to start on the side that has the v. I'm going to double this to get rid of the fraction, and then I will divide both sides by m. Turns out there's 1 on both sides, that cancels out. So if I rewrite this, I have v squared is equal to 2gh. I'm going to take the square root of both sides to cancel out that exponent. V is now equal to the square root of 2gh, which is here, c. They asked for the speed of the object in terms of the other quantities, and the speed of the object, is that c or c squared? Oh, it's speed v, and here we go, v. So this looks pretty complicated, but all I have to do is to solve it for v. So I start from the outermost layer, I divide by s on both sides. I now have L over S is equal to the square root of 1 minus v squared over c squared. And I will square both sides to get rid of that square root. It looks like they are distributing the squared to make it look like this. That shows up in every answer choice anyway. So if I rewrite, I have L squared over S squared is equal to 1 minus v squared over c squared. The next step is to subtract this 1 from both sides. And after that, I'm going to multiply both sides by c squared. So down here I have c squared multiplied by the quantity L squared over S squared minus 1. And on the right, I have just a negative v squared. So it looks like we're going to take the square root of both sides. And there's this negative to deal with as well. If I just multiply everything by negative 1, I have a negative c squared, a negative L squared over this. This becomes a plus, and this becomes a plus. And then I just take the square root of both sides. The square root of c squared is just c, and then I can take the square root of, and they look at it as 1 minus L squared over S squared is equal to v. So there's my answer, and that is the same as letter A. Next up, I'm expressing the temperature in degrees Rankine. I don't know what that is. R. So I know I'm going to solve it for R. So I'm going to take my original equation and work backwards. So to get rid of 5/9, I can multiply by 9/5. Cancels out over here. Then I can add 491.67 to both sides, and I have 9/5 C plus 491.67 is equal to R. So they flipped the fractions and they had plus or minus, and this is the one that matches up. For this one, they want me to, well, they rewrote the equation, t equals something, and they want to know what are these values. So let's look at the original. 4t minus 8d is equal to 12h. To solve this for t, I'm going to add 8d to both sides. 4t is equal to 12h plus 8d, and then I'm going to divide everything by 4. So I'm left with t is equal to 3h plus 2d. And they want to know, if a is in front of d, what is a? And that's just 2. Expressing y in terms of c and x. So just solve for y. C is equal to x over y. I'm going to multiply both sides by y. Cancels out. So I have yc is equal to x. Then I can divide by c on both sides. Cancels out. X over c.